And I thought, how can I warn people? How can we stop this in hospitals? I didn't even think 1 second to ask the doctor about the medication he was being given. But when you're on Oxycontin, you can become addicted with one prescription. And of course, I had no idea. None.
This is Christopher's mom and Amy Baxter's friend, Cammie Wolf Rice. She vividly remembers bringing Christopher home from the hospital.
He was going home with a hole in his stomach and a bag, and he needed psychological counseling, right, to deal with that. For a 17-year-old boy, right, a senior year in high school, they didn't prep us for what we were going home with, and not one single solitary word about any risk involved at all. Zero. Christopher, his dream was to be a Navy SEAL. He was very disciplined. He was an AP student, just super book smart is the way I would describe, but a hugger.
Years passed, and he didn't stop taking the pills.
So he was just constantly on the opioids and still managed to go to college, graduated college. But then he's the one that came to me and said, Mom, I have got a problem. I need this medicine just like you need air to breathe. He fought it for 14 plus years. I'm talking multiple rehabs. But when it hijacks your brain, you trigger, things happen, and you relapse. And he kept thinking he was failing us, he was failing himself, which of course, depression sets in. And you could have never in a million years would have I ever thought that Christopher would have done heroin. But he couldn't get the pills, and so he had to go to the street.
He overdosed in 2016.
And it literally took me 2 years to even talk to my family because of the stigma that we have in this country. As sadly as it sounds, I didn't want him to have a disrespectful death. I didn't want people to think of him horribly because he was such a wonderful person. So I think there was enormous guilt that I was feeling, that I failed as a parent. I failed as a mother, I failed as a mother. But then I realized that silence is deadly. And we need to be able to speak out, because if everybody was honest about it, everyone knows somebody that's suffering with addiction. Everybody.
That's when Cammie came up with an idea to give patients someone to guide them through the shock of dealing with pain, a kind of pain coach that she called a life care specialist.
We use coaches for everything in our society, except for when you're in a health crisis. I felt like there was a missing person on the healthcare team. So the job of a life care specialist, number one, is to educate you on the pain medication that you've been prescribed. Then we provide non-narcotic pain management techniques, things to distract your brain. So all of our life care specialists are certified also in techniques to deal with the mental side of a patient when you're in the hospital. If you're in the hospital, you probably have anxiety, stress, depression, and PTSD. Sometimes they need somebody to validate their pain, to validate their frustrations. Why did this happen to me? Why am I here? And they don't have that listening ear. And then follow up once you leave the hospital. Are you off your pain medicine? How to properly dispose of your opioids. And we found that 70% of patients didn't even know they were taking an opioid. A gentleman said, "Oh my God, I did not know I was taking an opioid, and my wife is in recovery. So I'm so glad you told me." So we were able to provide a lockbox so he could lock up his medicine. Those are a lot of little stories like that.
At first, Cammie was very strategic with where she placed life care specialists, but now she's hoping to expand.
We started in orthopedic trauma because that's where young people have their first introduction to opioids typically. It's a football injury, a car accident, a gymnastics injury, whatever the case may be. They go home with a big bottle of opioids, and that's where the problem starts. So we started in orthopedic trauma, but we've expanded into multiple departments, and now at the rural hospital, we're on the floor across the board. if Christopher would have had a life care specialist, if I would have had somebody telling me about the dangers of the medication he was going home with, he would be here today. And so I really feel like we're saving lives one patient at a time, and it's definitely a preventative role that needs to be in every hospital across the country.
That was Cammie Wolf Rice. She is founder of the CWC Alliance, the Christopher Wolf Crusade. She's also the author of The Flight, My Opioid Journey. Many thanks to her. And of course, Dr. Amy Baxter. She is a pain specialist, physician, and also the founder of Pain Care Labs. You can see her full talk at TED.com.